What if I told you that your allergies, they're not real? But your experience of them is very real. And so I wanted to just go over a little bit about what happens when you experience something that your body or your mind deems as a traumatic experience. Because your subconscious takes a snapshot of everything that is going on around you. So when you experience a trauma, your subconscious, not only does it take a snapshot of like who's there, what's happening, all of the things that you would imagine your subconscious remembers when there's a trauma, but it also takes in the barometric pressure, the pollen that's in the air, the time of year, the temperature, the smell, if you're eating food, the sounds, like it takes everything into account, and it creates a little like time stamp. And it's like, this is everything that was happening when we experienced that traumatic life event. And then what happens is every time the barometric pressure reaches the same thing, the pollen in the air is the same, you're eating the same food, whatever it is, you re-experience the trauma. And it reacts with your body. So it may sound like a little out there, I understand that, but haven't you ever, I feel like we've all had this, where you get sick on something like that you ate, right? You either feel like you got food poisoning, or maybe you drank a little bit too much. I know for me, like there was a time that I couldn't drink orange juice for like a decade. Because when I was a teenager, I got drunk on screwdrivers and had like the worst experience of my life. And the smell of orange juice literally made me nauseous. It's because my subconscious was speaking to me. It was like, oh my God, last time you did that, you got really sick. Don't do it again, right? So we've all had those type of experiences. It's the same thing when you have allergies. Your subconscious took a snapshot of what was happening, and then you get re-triggered every time you experience it. So I'll tell you a little bit of a story. So say there's this little girl, and she eats strawberries every morning for breakfast. And then one of those mornings, her parents get in a fight while she's eating the strawberries. And she starts to fear that they may get a divorce. And in that moment, she breaks out in a rash, because skin has to do with separation. And she doesn't understand that just them fighting might not mean they're going to get a divorce. They just might be fighting. But her little, child mind and body interpret that as a real threat. What if I get separated from my parents? What if my parents separate? Like that can be a very life-altering event that she experiences. So she gets the rash while she's eating the strawberries. The next day, she goes and eats the strawberries for breakfast again. And again, she breaks out in a rash because she's re-triggering that trauma from the day before. So this continues, and then mom says, oh my God, every time you eat strawberries, you get a rash. They go to the doctor. The doctor says, yes, she probably has an allergy, yada, yada, yada. You begin to believe that you have an allergy to a certain food, to a certain scent, whatever it is. It's just a re-triggering of that original trauma. The good news is that once you figure it out, you can start to heal. So I'm not telling you to go eat a food that you think you're allergic to. That's not what I'm saying. I believe that I am allergic to shellfish, and I know exactly when it happened. So I was about 18 years old, and I had been eating mainly shrimp for my entire life. And then I went through some traumatic experiences with a very toxic ex-partner and whatever. I was out to dinner with him eating shrimp, and when I got home a few hours later, I experienced what I now realize was a panic attack. But I didn't know that then. Nobody talked about panic attacks in the late 90s. So I didn't understand what was happening. It was not an allergy. There was no anaphylaxis. Like, I don't even, it was like, it was a panic attack. Anyway, so I was like, well, I'm not sure what that's about. Maybe it was the shrimp. I don't know. Whatever. I go again with this person, eat the same shrimp because I was like, well, I need to figure out if that's, what's causing this. And lo and behold, the same thing happens. It was like, I don't even know. It was like heart palpitation. It was a full-blown panic attack, but I didn't know that. And so I immediately associated it with eating the shrimp. I think I thought that it was like iodine or something that I don't know. Anyway, from that moment on, I believed that I had an allergy to shellfish and I avoided it for my now I still avoid it. And I can easily see how when I think I might have eaten something that's contaminated, I immediately start to have panic. That has gotten better as I've been consciously working on it over the years. But it has become very obvious to me, like how psychosomatic it can be, right? Just the thought that I may have eaten something that either touched shellfish or was fried in the same oil as shellfish, whatever it is, like I can immediately induce a panic attack that feels like an allergy attack. And I can also just as easily like shut it down and be like, don't be ridiculous, Tara. You didn't eat, and whatever it is, like for me, it's so clearly tied to my mental state. And once I became aware that the allergies are just imprints, I started to be able to have way less panic about things. And, there's a lot of ways that you can like go back, rewind time, especially with hypnosis and regression, that you can start to understand where this allergy came from. Even if you think about the seasons, like when you go back to school, the pollen is changing and, it's endless. It's endless. The things that could have happened that trigger a reaction in your physical body. So start to think about, when did this start? When did I first have this reaction that I believe now is an allergy? And see if you can start to unpack where that came from, what was happening in your life, why it might be happening, what might be happening when you feel a re-triggering of it. And definitely, seek understanding about what's happening. Again, I am not suggesting that you go out. If you feel like you're allergic to shellfish, do not go eat shellfish. That is not my suggestion. Just start to wonder and start to question and look for like deeper meaning and understanding behind the physical symptoms that the body is talking to you, and kind of, what you can find there. So let me know in the comments what this might have stirred within you, and let me know what happens when you start to tune into your body and ask why you might be experiencing certain symptoms.